the so-called 3% party, right? 3% party, kind of diminishing that, what they can do with, I think, like 24 hours notice. I didn't hear about this till yesterday. Maybe it was more than that, but 24, 48 hours notice, what they can pull together. Pretty amazing.
The sound of resistance rising up and ringing out across the country. Whether on foot or on wheels, they came in their droves. Here in the capital, around 800 marched to the Beehive. The official opening of Parliament upstaged by protest rejecting the new government.
This government thinks that they can walk all over constitutional rights, and it's not what we're about. Being young rangatahi Māori and watching all of those proposals is pretty worrying for us.
Leave the treaty where it is.
On his morning coffee run, David Seymour was interrupted by some protesters.
Well, I don't think they're going to win people over. And I think, unfortunately, they've got a government that is proposing a dialogue. And yet these guys...
What was that, David?
Traffic
I'm sorry, what?
The thing about that is I don't think they were necessarily there to propose a dialogue or to convince anybody. Like he's looking at like an election. They're not going to win any hearts and souls. They're not going to win any votes. It feels like today was hey, we're here and we're going to be here for the next 3 years. Fuck you guys if you're not about what we're about, but just fair warning, we're here. Whereas of course, Seymour's all like, well, debate and think about and bring people over to your side. It's like that wasn't. I get the sense that that's not what today was about. Today was on some level a show of force and a show of we're going to annoy you guys for 3 years. If you think you're going to get an ounce of peace doing this kind of bullshit, think again. That's what I got out of it, Chewy.
I think I'm seeing a little bit reflected in the chat how I feel about it as well. Is the last couple of from the actual election result and finding out what these guys consider important straight out of the gates, it's pretty disheartening, and it's disheartening for me, a white guy on the left in the bottom of the South Island. I can only imagine what it's like to be Māori and be on the receiving end of this.
Yeah.
And it must feel pretty fucking amazing right now to maybe like people would have gone on this hickory not knowing how many people were going to turn up, because it was just put together so quickly.
Yeah,
to see that many people turn up, and I'm seeing comments like this in the chat saying that this is heartening to see this sort of response and people standing up for things that they think that matters. And I think that is my takeaway from this. That yes, it's a show of force, and it's a bolstering move.
Interesting with Claire's comment there. I didn't think about that. Think about what February 6th is going to be. That'll be a really interesting Waitangi day. Really, really interesting.
Well, who will duck out? Who won't go to Waitangi?
Yeah.
Who will find a reason to not go?
Yeah, really interesting. All right, well, we've seen some numbers. Let's keep going. The story's got a couple of minutes to go. We'll get a bit more of a sense of the overall day.
Our biggest city almost forced to a standstill as cars crawled at snail's pace along the Auckland motorway during peak morning traffic.
Like, the reason why I'm here is for her.
At Rangiriri Pa near Huntly, some of those caught up in the traffic didn't mind.
Also good, it's for good cause. Hey, for the Māori.
I'm all with Pati Maori. I think it's really arrogant and appalling for the government, for any government, to suggest that they should review the treaty in any way.
Do you know what I just thought? And I'm partly wrong in this, I know. But the sense, because I know the anti-vaxxers were saying, they're doing it for the next generation. But what I got a sense of most anti-vaxxers was, I can't get my latte, right? And what I get a sense from this is it is about the next generation. Now, I know some people will debate that with me because they'll be talking about, their mythical vaccines in the next generation. But the general sense I get from that group of protesters is me. The general sense I get from this is them. Do you see that at all? Am I seeing that by myself?
100%.
All right, here we go.
Many non-Māori took part in today's action, including here in Wellington as hundreds gathered on this overbridge.
If we don't stand up for each other at the times that we need to, we're going to be just like everywhere else.
And that's what you're saying, Chewy. And I've said this, look, I've been saying this on some level for 20 years since doing talkback and stuff. Really, the only thing that makes us unique to any country in the world, any Western colonized country in the world, is our fauna, our flora, our plants and our animals, and Māori. That's really it. I mean, Australia does hot summers and on the beach for Christmas Day. So does South Africa. They like rugby. So, it really is the only thing that separates us from the rest of the world. And I think that in itself is a treasure that we have to hold on to, which means perfect. No New Zealand culture without Māori culture. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I used to do this. I was shit stirring, but when I was doing talkback, it wouldn't be irregular, maybe once a year or something. You'd go, so define New Zealand culture for me. And they'd phone up and they'd say, summer at the beach with a barbie. And I'd be like, you mean like Australia? And it's actually quite hard. I'm not going to say it's impossible. That would be arrogant to find anything that's non-Indigenous that gives any credence to us being an individual country. Mm. And so I agree with that person. Anything, Chewy, or should I keep going?
No, keep going.
Here in Tauranga, along State Highway 2, the message was clear.
We will not be led down a path of erasure, and I think that's actually the fundamental point.
But back at Parliament, political leaders in charge argue the criticism is unwarranted.
What I'd say out here is I think it's pretty unfair, to be honest. I think the reality is we're in government for a week.
Oh no. It's unfair. Christopher Luxury Man. I'm sorry.
I mean, is it kind of unfair, like iwi having land taken off them during World War II and a promise to give it back to them and then the government never giving it back? Is it as unfair as that? Or is it more fair than that? Or is it people actually participating in their democratic right, you fucking bald wanker?
We are going to get going to get things done for Māori and for non-Māori, and that's what our focus is.
Yeah, that's why they got on the streets. They see what you're doing.
But they're trying to say that a government who stands for treating all people the same is racist.
Right. This is a lie that we're going to fight for as long as we do this. For a government that stands for treating all people the same. I know I've banged on about this year, but this government does not and will never, quote unquote, treat all people the same. The reason that David Seymour has this racist trope is because what he's saying is treating all people the same based on race. But even that's not true. All you need to do is have a look at how Māori are treated in the justice system versus Pākehā or versus non-Māori. And there's a different setup for both sides. Remember, race is a protected class. Human Rights Commission, race, age, religion, there's about 7 of them. Disability, it's a protected class. David Seymour is trying to flatten the curve for race, or so he says, but he's happy for people not to be treated the same when it comes to age, when it comes to disability, when it comes to religion. So the reason that what he says, and I struggle to call anything racist, not anything, but this, but I am comfortable calling it incredibly racially charged. And what it does is it feeds racists. Without question, it feeds racists. So even that, right? The reality with making things equal based on race or treating people equal based on race, that implies as well that we've got the same starting point, which we don't. Many, many, many people think they've hit a home run, not acknowledging they started life on third base. So technically, if you wanted to make everything equal based on race, Māori would have to come up a lot, and lots of people who get a better slice of the pie purely because of their race would have to come down a bit. But they're not talking about that. They're just talking about, med school and that kind of stuff. This is all they're saying. Like Māori taking care of Māori in the health system. What are you talking about? And it's not true. We don't treat everyone the same. We never will, and we never should. I shouldn't be treated the same as someone with a massive disability who needs a park closer to McDonald's. They should have that right, that legal right, that right that has to go through government and local body to get that, because they need it. And there are plenty of Māori, as the stats would show, who need something from the government that they have a contractual agreement with more than others to help them actually flatten the curve. To flatten the curve means bringing Māori up. That would flatten the curve. And Seymour's just going, let's eradicate all of those, what he thinks are advantages. I remember this thing I always ask, Chewy, if Māori are so advantaged and if they're gaming the system so much, why are they on the bottom of all the societal stats? That doesn't make sense to me.
I know, because it's bullshit, Pat. Yeah, look, it sounds great, right? If you have someone without any context saying all people should be equal, that sounds great. Why wouldn't you be for that? He's saying equal. He's not saying, he's not talking about equity. You know, and that's always my catch. He wants to draw a start line at one arbitrary point and go, see, like, we're all the same. It's not. He ignores generational damage. He ignores decades and decades of disadvantage pointed at Māori as soon as they got outnumbered by Europeans.
Yeah.
As soon as that switched and they went, wow, fuck it, we don't have to pay any attention to this document that we signed that we're just letting rats chew on now. It's irrelevant. There's more of us than you, and we've got the more guns, so shut the fuck up. So if he wants to talk about we're all equal, let's roll it back to that. And let's roll it back to the document that was fucking signed. This
the
is
one that
the
was
thing. Like,
the one that was signed by Māori as well.
Why is it suddenly like, oh, all people should be equal? Okay, so can we have some government departments referred to by a Māori name? Well, no, not like that. You can be underneath. You can be the second name, the small name,
the suppressed
name in English, because there are more people that speak English than Māori, and we don't want that to change. You know, we don't want to be actively mean to Māori and disadvantaged Māori. We just want to be passively mean and disadvantaged to Māori. You know, we're not doing something as ugly as apartheid. That would be terrible. But there are two systems. You know, it's just and it's borne out, like you said, by every stat that counts. If you are Māori, you will get a worse sentence in court. You will get harsher treatment from the police. You will get doctors that do not believe you. You will get hospitals that aren't funded as well. You will get teachers that treat you differently from white students. So, you know, you tell me where the advantage from Māori is. Whenever an advantage is brought up, it's some sort of redress to those things that I just listed. So fuck these people talking about equality. Like, it doesn't hurt me if Māori get more from the country that they live in.
And just remember, and I have said this before as well, I don't want to go on like a banging cymbal, but most people would agree that if my father was the richest man in New Zealand, I would have an advantage. If my grandfather was the richest man in New Zealand, I would have an advantage. If my great-grandfather was the richest man in New Zealand, I would still have an advantage. There's almost no challenging that, right? But what they're not prepared, people like David Seymour are not prepared to accept is if my father was the worst treated person in New Zealand, I would be impacted by that. If my grandfather was the worst treated person in New Zealand, I would be impacted by that. If my great-grandfather, so it's very easy to see and accept that if wealth's in your family, it would flow on. But when you're talking about harm, that flows on as well. And that's, I think, the education. And I guess I'm sounding arrogant like I've got the answer, but to me, that feels like the education that some of these people need to know about intergenerational harms and intergenerational ills. Just like the positives can flow through, so can the negatives. Right, let's get to the end of this.
John, for a long time yet.
Kia ora, Mikey. Plenty of action today, but what happens now?
Te Pati Maori is promising this is just the beginning, not just one single hekoi, but a marathon of protests over the next 3 years. Remember, Te Pati Maori won 6 of the 7 Maori electorates. That was not by accident. They have a majority behind them in terms of Maori, and they will want to make that count. They also have some big iwi leaders behind them. That's why we saw some big numbers out in protest today. Remember, that is no small feat, given that they are the smallest party in Parliament government at the moment. On the other hand, of course, you have ACT and New Zealand First. They will not back down from this fight. They fought hard for their policies on reo, on treaty and on race during the election campaign, and they will not walk away from those easily. Alongside the National Party, of course, they also won the majority support from the public to implement those policies. Now, the big challenge for Christopher Luxon is this. This could well tarnish his legacy as Prime
Preach, Mikey.
Minister. He will not want that, especially when a lot of the more extreme policies that were criticised today belong to his coalition partners.
Preach, Mikey. That is absolutely true. Will that be enough, though, to help keep some of this in check? At the moment, it doesn't look that way.